Hey everyone, my name is Carlos. I am the founder and CEO of Product School, and today I'm here with Laura Klein, who's the author of Build Better Products, among many other things, including a previous book, UX for Lean Startups. Hey Laura.
Hello, how are you?
Thank you for joining the show. I'm excited to have you here because I've seen you in live conferences when that was a thing, and I know that you bring a really interesting point to building products. I think there's a lot of emphasis on like engineering and technology, which is important, but I also want to talk with you more about like the human side of things, especially when it comes to design thinking.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to understand humans, who better to talk to than somebody who has freely admitted that she has never understood humans?
Let's try. Why don't you tell us a little more about kind of your background and what inspired you to now write Build Better Products?
Yeah. So I've been in tech for 8,000 years, and I started out sort of doing very, very early research, and then pivoted to becoming a front-end engineer, and have since worked in UX design and product. And so I have kind of done all the things. My friend Dan calls me a triple threat. I think that's just because he finds me a little threatening. But I kind of bounce back and forth between UX and product a lot. And I very much enjoy talking about product management to UX designers and about UX design to product managers, because I feel like we could all work better together.
Totally. I come from an engineering background, and actually most of the PMs that I know, they either come from engineering or business, however you want to define business. But I haven't seen enough designers who turn PM, so I want to explore that with you.
Yeah, no, I would love to see more designers turn into PMs, especially the designers who have that sort of holistic, user-centered thinking. I think that it helps in very specific types of products. I feel like the funny things, I started back in the 90s, and all the product managers came out of either engineering or marketing. Back then was a big thing too, depending on the kind of product management. And I think that the reason that was true was just because it sort of evolved from there, right? And a lot of the products were extremely technical and extremely difficult to understand because we were all doing everything from, bare metal. And you kind of had to have a product manager who understood all of the technology and understood all of that. And so engineers were a great source of that. I do that. Some of my favorite product managers have been ex-engineers.
So what would you say are the main highlights of your book for people who haven't read it yet?
Well, it's delightful. It's quite fun. It is 400 pages long, so it's a good value. But other than that, I specifically it came out of a lot of workshops and activities that I did with teams and clients that happened because I had written the first book. So what happened was I wrote UX for Lean Startups back in 2013, and after that, I spent several years going around and doing coaching and training and working directly with teams and doing, actual hands-on work. And I found that I was leading a bunch of workshops and helping folks. And I found that I was drawing a lot of the same pictures on the whiteboard. And I found that I was doing a lot of the same activities over and over because a lot of people had really similar challenges that they were facing. And so I Build Better Products came from working with those teams to try to get more specific and teach teams how to use some of the concepts in UX for Lean Startups. So it's very much a workbook, which is not typical, I don't think. There are lots of activities in it that you're supposed to use and adapt and change and hopefully tell me about when you change. I love it when people do that. They'll be like, oh yeah, we use this activity, but we changed these three things. I'm like, that's fantastic. That's exactly how you're supposed to use it. So it is very much a hands-on, oh, you want to do this thing. You want to learn more about your, what metrics you should pay attention to, or you want to validate an idea or invalidate an idea, or you want to get better at making product decisions or whatever. Here's an activity that you can try as a team to do this.
So what is the role that UX or design teams should play in, I would call like modern product management? Because back in the day, one of the things that I saw is that design used to come at the end. It's like, okay, business people saying what's going to happen, and then poor engineers and designers like trying to make it happen, right? But it's almost like they receive the instructions.
Yeah.
Like what's going on now?
Yeah, that was never supposed to be the way it worked. That is, I 100% agree with you that is the way that people did it. I would quibble with the description of it working that way, because I don't think it worked particularly well, even back then. So it also depends on whether you consider user research to be part of user experience design. I do. I think that there are specific skills and talents and roles, but I very much think of like the UX. The UX includes understanding your user. The UX, which is research and synthesis and ideation and all of that stuff. So I am very much of the feeling that we should all be involved in making the decisions about what our team is working on together. Now, that doesn't mean absolutely everybody together doing absolutely everything all the time. You don't have to have a team of 15 going out to do all of your user research together. We're not joined at the hip. But it does mean that everybody needs to be involved in the user research. You might have a specialist who is facilitating that. Everybody needs to be involved with deciding which features meet our business goals and our users' goals the best. And, you might have a designer who is facilitating that session. A lot of times designers also get into the details and the weeds of like, this is how it's actually going to work. And this is how, it's actually going to look. And this is the experience that the user is going to have. And I think that's fantastic. I think that we should do that. I just don't think that that's at the end, right? It's having it at the end is very much here we made a thing, go make it pretty, sprinkle some UX on it, as we like to say. And I don't think, a lot of times it's just kind of like, well, you have designed something that does not meet a user need and also is completely unusable, even for the thing that you want people to do, which they don't want to do. So it is too late for me as a user experience designer to help you. You are past help. Had you brought me on when you were saying, oh, this is a metric that we need to move within the company, and these are some of the user problems that we think exist, then I could help you craft an idea. I could help you craft, a solution for the problem. I could help you figure out what user behaviors you want to encourage or discourage. I could help you think about, things holistically, and then I could help you figure out, the details of the design and exactly how it's going to work. And, that all of that stuff, that's all design. It's all also product management. You will see. It's just that I think that the work is too much for one person. And so I often feel like really good teams kind of split up all the things that need to be done based on who's good at what. I don't care that much about, job titles. Like, I'm not going to say, oh, you're an engineer, so you are not allowed to do research. Well, that's nonsense. If you're great at it and you really want to do it, and, yes, you should absolutely be involved and maybe do some of it.
I agree with you, and I think that's especially true in startups where smaller teams and like everyone is kind of doing what they can to push in the same direction. Mm-hmm. And I want to ask about that because you mentioned the UX researcher, which I recognize how valuable that is, but I can also recognize that I didn't have a full-time user researcher when I started, just because my first hires were mostly engineers and then at some point one designer. So in those scenarios where there is still not an official UX researcher, how would you recommend that a product team could also start using user research?
Get good at understanding things from users, possibly hire. I have a particular way that I very much like working with external researchers when you can get them, which is I don't like the idea of hiring somebody to learn all about my product and then letting them go away. That is not appropriate. So if you bring in an external user researcher, which I think can be extremely useful because they have a lot of specialized knowledge about how to get the questions answered that you want to get answered. Have them actually guide you, have them guide the research, have them facilitate the research, but make sure that you are involved at every step of the way and that you are understanding all of the things that they are hearing. This is not a thing that you can pay somebody to go do for you per se. You absolutely can. There are people who charge you a lot of money to do that. And if that's the best you got, that's the best you got. But I think like most user researchers that I know would much rather you be involved personally and the whole team be involved personally in the whole process so that it's basically like having somebody on your team. And also I very much like the idea of continuous discovery, which is the thing that Teresa Torres teaches a lot about, which is baking into your every day or every week process some interaction with users. Make sure you're talking to users, make sure that you're listening to different users, make sure that that is just an automated part of your process where this is just a weekly thing where you're getting some feedback. Doing that, I don't think gets rid of the need to occasionally run bigger, more targeted research, to do something very specific, to do some ethnography, to really deeply understand your users, or even to do some very specific usability testing or experimentation. There's all kinds of research that needs to get done. If you can't bring somebody on who's a specialist, full time, you can hire a coach, you can hire a trainer, you can get real good at it yourself, but don't pretend like you can get away with not doing it and still build something good. Because I think that is the default for people. They say, oh, we're going too fast, we don't have time for research. Well, I hope you have time to change everything later when you realize how much you got wrong.
Love that. I mean, one of the main questions that I get from different PMs is, hey, I'm working as a PM and I'm not a designer. Mm-hmm. I would like to learn a little bit more about design, but it's not that they want to become full-time designers, just want to have a design eye and better empathize with user researchers and other members of the design team. Like, what would you say to that, to those folks?
Right. So I always like to say you should think about designers and the concept of design the way that you think about doctors in some cases. So stick with me on this possibly tortured metaphor. If you go to a doctor, most of us, you can go to a GP and, you go to somebody and they, kind of help you with your general, you're healthy, and most doctors can do that. But there are a lot of specialists in medicine, right? There are very few people who are experts in, cardiology and also, feet. And if you have a problem with your heart, you probably don't want to go to a podiatrist, right? And vice versa. They're not really interchangeable. That said, whatever you're having a problem with, right? You can get really, really good at understanding, the thing that you have that you want help with. If you have flat feet, you might know way more about how to fix flat feet than, anybody but a specialist in podiatry. So think about it kind of like, so I don't think that product managers should think about I want to learn design. Design's not a thing, right? And there's no bonus points to learning design, right? Do you want to learn visual design? And if so, why? Do you want to learn more about user research and how to understand your users better? Which I highly recommend. Learn more about that kind of stuff. If you want to learn more about user flows and interaction design, learn more about that. If you want to get specific about things like, oh, I'm designing a new search system and I have to learn all about, the different types of search and the different types of taxonomies for catalogs and, faceted search versus filtering versus tagging versus, canonical categorization. But learn that if you're working in, machine learning. God help you. But, learn more about designing explicitly for that. Or if you're doing voice user interfaces, that's going to be a wild, I remember I did a project, a million years ago. I did several projects in voice user interface. And let me tell you something, typography is not a part of that. There is no use for any knowledge about typography when you're doing voice interfaces, unless you're doing a multimodal thing that also has a voice interface and also, anyway, figure out what you're trying to do and get better at the thing you're trying to do. Figure out what your problem is and how to solve it. Don't worry too much about I want to be a designer. It's kind of like saying I want to learn more about engineering. Well, I mean, it's going to depend a lot on what the stack is that you're working on and what the product is that you're working on and who, what your engineers are like. Yeah. There's no single thing to learn.
And I completely agree with you because it feels almost like a lot of people, they won't break into PM. They come with a checklist. They're like, okay, what is it that I need to learn so I can put on my resume and go and apply for a job, right? And one of the things that I love about product, I'm obviously biased, but I think being in the middle and having different challenges coming at you, it's almost when they force me to go out there and try to figure it out, to learn enough. Because I think when I was a full-time student back in the day, someone could tell me about user research, but if I'm not really in the weeds right now, feeling the pain because I need to ship something, like I'm not going to pay the same level of attention. I think product has that opportunity to be curious enough to dive whenever you have a situation. And then, of course, you have to decide, right? Because it's not just about I'm going to take the right pill from Matrix and suddenly learn everything that I need. You also have to decide when you need to delegate and collaborate.
Yeah, well, and do you want to know enough about? I'm a big fan of being what I call, for example, technology literate, which is like I think designers and PMs should understand enough about technology generally and their specific technology in which they are working to communicate well with engineers, to understand what engineers are going through, to understand what their challenges are, to have smart conversations about the choices that they're making and actually be able to help with those. Many can't. I will be perfectly honest. Many product managers and designers that I have worked with can't do that. And I think that that is a really important thing to get better at. I don't think, a lot of us come in, we're brand new, we don't know anything, that's fine.
Yeah.
That is a thing I think to focus on that's extremely important. Notice at no point did I say that you should know how to code or that you should know how to be the one designing the algorithm. Like there's a real big difference between understanding what an algorithm is and what it does and actually being able to design a better one that does a specific thing. So same thing with APIs. Like I couldn't design and build an API right now, but I mean, I sure know what they are and I know how to use them and when and what they're good for.
Let me double click on that because I think it's a really hot topic. Like I actually going both ways. Like engineers who maybe feel uncomfortable having a non-technical conversation and vice versa. Product managers maybe don't come from a technical background, thinking that, oh my God, like these engineers, like they come from a different world. I don't know how their lingo, right? And what would be some, I would say, like practical things that maybe a non-technical PM could apply to just break down those barriers and be able to have a conversation?
Oh, that's a great question. I have the conversation first. I mean, it's tricky because I am probably the wrong person to answer that question. I will be perfectly honest, because coming from a somewhat technical background, I was never a great engineer. I was never a super hardcore back-end engineer. I was a front-end engineer. But it was also back in like the late 90s, early 2000s. So, I kind of had to be a bit of a generalist in a lot of areas. So I touched a lot of things, but again, a lot of my data is kind of out of date. So just being open and talking to people and understanding what they're talking about. And then when you don't understand something, saying, hey, do you mind explaining that to me? Make friends with the engineers, have them help you. A lot of them are perfectly happy to explain things and, not all of them, and figure out which ones are, find the friendly ones who don't bite and, offer them some snacks or whatever. And, just have the conversation and have them explain things. They love, in my experience, many of them love drawing things on the whiteboard, that explains the full product architecture. And if you don't understand that, just keep asking questions and, you will eventually understand it. And you can also take notes about things like, oh, she mentioned X, I should go learn more about X and, try to get sort of an overview of that. One of the great things that exists now that just did not exist in the 90s when I was learning to program was there's just so much free information out there that all you really need is some pointers to oh, it's this technology. Oh, okay, I'm just going to go I'll read a quick thing. Again, you don't have to be great at it. You just have to be curious about it. And you have to learn enough that you can then ask a better question next time.
And I believe that vocabulary creates our reality. And when I use the word product team, I try to be very intentional to include not just the product managers, but in this case, engineers, designers, UX researchers, data, anyone who's involved in the creation of something. Mm-hmm. So I want to explore this topic about design for agile teams, because I don't want this to be just PMs, UX designers, and vice versa. How can you kind of involve an entire agile team into a design thinking or a design thinking process so they can all be part of the problem and the solution?
Yeah, I mean, it very much depends on what your definition of Agile is. If your definition of Agile is like mine, a cross-functional, collaborative, semi-autonomous team that is, judged based on outcomes rather than outputs, then it's really easy. It just happens. The trick is that you need to have specific goals and metrics that you are given as a team, and that you have to have some flexibility among the team to do things like experiment and find the best way forward to do the thing that you want to do. You need to actually incorporate, good user understanding and user research techniques. And you also need to be able to work at multiple levels. This is a really hard thing for a lot of designers and PMs. I have found you need to be able to sort of say, okay, well, this is the vision. Like, this is the overall thing. Like, we've validated that this is a thing that we really need. We need to build this feature. We think based on our understanding that it's going to move the needle in this particular direction. It's going to be good for users because of this. We understand this. We know this because of the research that we did or whatever. Now we need to move forward and actually do it. And there's a lot of details and things that need to happen. And you need to be able to slice that up into pieces where you can be continuously delivering value to the user, getting feedback, iterating, figuring out what the smallest possible thing that you can build is, and constantly just improving that. And I did a bunch of research on designing for Agile teams very recently. And one of the things that made me just absolutely wildly angry was so many people said that they hated designing on Agile teams because they never iterated. And that's kind of the whole thing. I mean, that's iterating is 80% of Agile. I mean, that's probably not fair, but it's one of the core tenets that you've got to get customer feedback and you have to iterate. And that's the whole point, that you're getting things in front of customers, you're getting feedback, you're coming up with new ideas, you're seeing what you were right and wrong about. And so that's just, you have to build that into the whole process. None of that is easy. I'm saying it oh yeah, you just do all of these things, each of which is incredibly difficult and possibly doesn't work at your organization and may require a tremendous amount of effort and learning on your part. That said, if you can do it, it's a great way to build products.
I agree. And obviously, each product team is different, even within the same company. Mm-hmm. And we heard this term Agile. The Agile Manifesto was created 20 years ago. Of course, it's evolved. Design thinking. There are certain terms that are thrown at us, and I'm sure that if we ask different people, they may have different definitions. So when you go in with a product team to try to help them create a process that works for them, that iterates and so on, what are some pointers for someone who says hey, I think we need to reset this. I think we are being too waterfall. I think we're working in silos. Is there any opportunity for them at least to start learning about it?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, define your terms. So as you point out, right, Agile was come up with, in a ski lodge back in 2001, I believe. And lots has changed. And some of it not in good ways. Some of it we should go back to what it was 2,000 years ago. Some of it doesn't work for the kinds of teams that we have now. Some of it does. But here's the thing. If somebody ever comes to you and says, we need to do an Agile transformation, you need to stop them right there and say, why? What are you trying to do? I'm not saying that you don't need to do an Agile transformation. That might be exactly what you need to do, but figure out what you want it for. Why are you doing it? Are you doing it to what are you trying to improve? Are you trying to go faster? Are you trying to build things that customers actually want? In that case, you might want more lean startup than Agile. They work nicely together. They're fantastic. I'm a big fan of both, obviously. What are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to make your team happier? Are you trying to react more quickly to existing things? Are you just failing at waterfall? Did you have a really bad experience? Don't ever adopt a thing for the thing. Adopt the thing for what it gets you, right? I am a fan of user-centered design, not because I love the process of user-centered design. Sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's a lot of work. I am a fan of user-centered design because I feel that incorporating user needs into the thing that we are building makes things better for the people for whom we are building it. And I think that often, if we have our business model aligned correctly, will give us a better business, right? It'll make it a better company. We'll sell more things to people, and we'll keep the customers that we have who like our thing because it's great for them. That's why I do it. I don't do it because, hey, it's a buzzword, right? Don't do Agile to be Agile. Do Agile because it gets you a thing that you want.
Exactly.
figure out what that is. And then the thing about Agile is you have to apply all of that like iteration and changing things to the process itself. That's also part of it, right? Like you might change it entirely. You might really like XP. You might really like, Kanban. Not everything is Scrum.
I completely agree. And I think it's important to have options, to understand what each of these methodologies mean and how, and then apply your own playbook. And I've seen companies that use different processes, I would say, for different product teams, just because of the.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
That was just my point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, you should, right? Your DevOps team does not have the same needs as your growth team, right? That's not, those are different jobs. Those are different. They're going for different things, right? They have different sets of customers. DevOps teams have mostly internal customers. Growth teams, quite the opposite, hopefully.
Yeah, and I want to share a counterpoint I've noticed in certain agile organizations or teams, which is when there's a lot of collaboration, which seems to be a good thing, but at the same time, there can be a little of analysis paralysis, right? Like if we start involving too many people at so many points in the process, then, well, who calls the shots? At what point it's enough and we need to move on?
Yeah, so I think that you need to have somebody in charge of every project or every team, right? And I think that doesn't mean that they make all of the decisions per se, but it means that they make sure that all of the decisions get made in a reasonable amount of time. In the last chapter of my book, Build Better Products, has the concept of the heist team. And I wrote it because I really like watching heist movies and because I've always wanted to rob a bank. I'm just going to be perfectly honest. I just think that would be really fun. I never will do it. For any law enforcement officials watching, it's not a thing I'm going to do, but I very much enjoy watching heist movies. All of them. And if you watch a really good heist movie, you have this team of experts that has been put together in order to do things. And you have a leader. There's always a leader. There was the person who was like, we are getting the gang back together for one last big heist. And they have the vision, right? They know what bank we're knocking over. They have the reason that we're knocking over that bank. It's because, the money truck that delivers the gold bullion pulls up, to that bank on Thursdays at 2 p.m. And we know this, and, we know when all the shift changes are. And like, we've done all the research and in heist movies, it's called recon. We've done all the recon, but like, so I'm the eventual decision maker. That said, I don't necessarily get to tell the safecracker how to crack the safe. I can give the safecracker the parameters for cracking the safe. I can tell them it's this kind of safe. We can't use explosives because of the noise, because we're right next to, a school and it'll be heard. So whatever, right? I can give them the parameters and the constraints, but I don't tell them this is how you crack a safe. I hire somebody who I know cracks safes. And so everybody is making decisions all of the time, sometimes independently, sometimes collaboratively. Sometimes I need to work, if I am cracking the safe, I might need to work with the demolitions expert because I need to get the right kind of explosives. I have put way too much thought into this, and it really sounds like I'm just a criminal at this point.
Love the example. I've never heard that parallel between a product team and a heist team, but I think it makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's terrifyingly apt. But yeah. Anyway, go watch this thing. It's fine. Or the Italian job. Any of them, all of the oceans.
It's been a pleasure to learn from you, Laura. Where can we find more about your work?
Yes. So if you go to usersknow, that is users, KNOW.com, all of my stuff is there. Links to the books. I have a podcast called What is Wrong with UX that I do with Kate Rudder. We used to do it twice a month. Now we do it kind of whenever we damn feel like it. It's a lot of this, except we talk about UX. And yeah, lots of videos and stuff. It's all on Users Know. You can also follow me on Twitter at Laura Klein. Yeah, I'm around.
Thank you so much for your time. Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.